Do any of you have any questions about the quiz one? Okay, it's up. Quiz one is up until tomorrow night at midnight. Just reminder, gotta have like something behind you. So, um, hold on a second. This. So, something that's like positioned in such a way that like this is like what I'm kind of going for. Like I want to see that area as like this is where the phone goes, and then this is where the notes go, or they could be like. So I just want to kind of see something like if you just take it kind of like in front of a mirror, then not like what I'm holding one, but like if you take it in front of a mirror, then you'll have like that screen. It's not working right now. You know what I'm doing? I'm not spending a lot of time on it. Or or we're supposed to take it on paper today, but I felt like they were encouraging us not to have classes on campus today. So um, let me see if the weather becomes better tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow, and if we absolutely have to, I'll do the paper version Monday. God, I want to say that. So if you're going to take it online, your deadline is tomorrow night. You're going to need to use Google Chrome because it's gonna have you download the extension. So you gotta have Google Chrome and then download the Proctorio extension. So um, if you after tomorrow night at midnight, I won't reset the online version. You gotta come take it on paper. So um, if you want to take it online, I would take it today, tonight, something like that. Right. So that way, if something gets messed up, or at least take it kind of earlier tomorrow. That way, if you're having trouble, then um, you can contact me. People that are going to have trouble with it are not the people that are watching this or that are going to watch the recording. That's the whole thing. You guys who are actually paying attention, you're probably not going to have any problems with anything. It's always the people that don't watch anything. They're just going to go straight into that test. Just cold, completely cold. So, all right, let me get off of this. That was the wrong thing. Okay. Hopefully, you guys can see the. Let me know if you cannot see the PowerPoint presentation. These are some glands we're going to be talking about. The most important of the endocrine glands are up in the brain here. So you see the pituitary and the hypothalamus right above it. The hypothalamus is not really well defined. The pituitary, you could see the two lobes, so that's defined pretty well. The hypothalamus is just above it, so that's it. Um, we'll be talking about the thyroid. We will be discussing the. I'm making sure none of you are. Oh yeah, see. China, did you make it into the class? We'll be looking at a few the thyroid, not really the thymus at this point. The thyroid, the pancreas, which is here underneath the Stomach, the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, um, testes, ovaries. Um, yeah. So we talked about this last time, the idea of circulating hormones, and then we had paracrine and autocrine hormones. And both of those are local hormones. So we already went over that. We didn't go over hormone interactions because I forgot. So they're right there in front of you. Sometimes hormones work together, and sometimes they do not. They work against each other. So get with each other, synergistic, against each other, antagonistic. Don't get that confused with the word agonist. Agonist, antagonist, they're different things, right? So to antagonize. So antagonist working against, and then permissive, one hormone. You need one hormone before you can get some other hormones to work. So if you think about, um, well, I'll give you examples as we go through them. But these are three hormone interactions. And then we talked about, this is kind of where we left off on Monday. We talked about hormone interactions, and this one is the easier one. It's the one that is lipid soluble. So here's the hormone in green. And see, it's using a transport protein because it's a lipid soluble hormone. So it cannot just go into the blood by itself. But the important thing is, here's the hormone, and it goes right through the membrane of the cell, because that membrane's made out of lipids. It goes into the nucleus, and it turns genes on and off. See, right here at number 2, they're saying alter gene expression. So that. This was the harder one, which I'm not going to go over every detail. This was like the hardest part of the lecture on Monday. And the point is that the hormone, here's the hormone, it's not actually entering the cell. You see, it doesn't go in the cell, it just hits this receptor. And then that causes that chain reaction. And then it ended up at the end. When you go to the end, you end up with a bunch of enzymes getting activated. So it's like enzyme activates an enzyme, which activates another enzyme, which activates another enzyme. And at the end of the whole thing, you end up with the enzymes that are actually going to make a change being activated. So at the bottom, they're saying millions of phosphorylated enzymes. That means activated, right? To phosphorylate means to activate something, to give energy to something. Phosphorylated enzymes, they make the physiological response happen. So the enzymes are making the cell change its behavior. Whereas that other one with the lipid soluble hormone, it's the DNA, it's your genetics. That's changing the cell's behavior. So that's kind of where we left off on Monday. And it was, this slide it's a pain in the ass slide to have for a first class. It is. I know it is. I hope you got it down, but I know it's a lot of information. It's not all like that. So let's look at kind of how the endocrine system in general works. So we're gonna kind of center it around this gland called the pituitary gland. So remember, up in the head, right here. So the pituitary gland is we used to think it was the master gland, but it turns out the pituitary gland has another gland that controls it, the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is kind of like the the central CEO of the endocrine system, right? It's getting input. The hypothalamus controls a few things. The hypothalamus controls your hormones, And it also controls all other things like hunger, thirst, fear. But here we're talking about hormones. So the hypothalamus has all these nerves plugged into it from all around the body, right? All these sensory nerves from around your body. It's like your car. If you leave your gas cap off, there's like a sensor that triggers that, and your tire pressure and low oil. All those sensors are going into like a central computer in your car, right? It's like that, right? That's like the hypothalamus. And then, based on what those inputs are saying, blood sugar too low, blood sugar too high, metabolism too low, metabolism too high. Depending on all of that, um, I'm looking at my phone here just to make sure that you guys aren't telling me. Okay. So, so the hypothalamus controls everything. So what it's going to do, let's give an example of your metabolism, right? So you have hormones that regulate your metabolism, and when they're too high, you're going to feel, um, like really hot, and you're not going to be able to sleep well. Your skin might be dry, things like that. You're losing weight. That's your overactive metabolism, and that's controlled by the pituitary gland here, right in the neck. And you don't have to like know all this at this minute. I'm just giving you an example of how this system works. So when the hormone levels, I mean, when the metabolism levels in your body, when they get thrown off, like they're not normal, there's a signal, there's a nerve going up to the hypothalamus that lets the hypothalamus know, hey, there's not enough hormone, for example, right? That's a common problem. Call it hypothyroidism, right? So it's you're not making enough thyroid hormone, and your metabolism's low, gaining weight, tired all the time, constipation, things like that. So what happens is that signals are getting sent up to the hypothalamus saying, "Hey, this person's metabolism's not working well," and so the hypothalamus is going to make a chemical that it's going to send right next door to the pituitary gland, and then the pituitary gland, its job is to communicate with all these organs. So the pituitary gland communicates with the adrenal glands, or with the ovaries or testes, or with wherever, the thyroid gland in this case, right? So, um, student. So you, so when the pituitary gland will make a hormone then that communicates with the thyroid gland. Once, all right, I already see I got off track here because I'm letting students in. So let me try this again and maybe do it. Maybe be a little more clear. All right. What's the problem? Metabolism's too low. Hypothalamus gets that message. Metabolism's too low. It sends a chemical to the pituitary, right underneath. The pituitary sends a chemical to the thyroid, telling the thyroid, hey, the hypothalamus told me that you're not making any thyroid hormones, so metabolism's low. Then ideally, the thyroid will start making more thyroid hormones, metabolism gets to normal levels, and then the problem is solved. Then once that problem is solved, the hypothalamus doesn't get any more input. So it's like a circle. Metabolism is getting around the body is getting measured. Inputs are going up to the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is connected to the pituitary. Pituitary connected to the thyroid. Thyroid connected to the metabolism. So it's like a feedback loop. right? And so negative feedback, which is how most of these hormones work, once the problem's solved, that's it. No need to take action anymore. So I view the hypothalamus as like the CEO, and the pituitary is like upper management, and the thyroid gland in this case would be like the factory floor workers, right? So when production's not high on the factory floor, the CEO is not going to go down there every time, right? The CEO's got a person. The CEO, so the CEO is getting reports all the time. How's production? Is it up? Is it up, down, right? And so based on that, it's talking to the upper management, which is pituitary gland. So that's kind of how it works. So the pituitary gland is doing a lot of the work here, although it's being controlled by the hypothalamus, but it's communicating with a lot of different areas of the body. So as you see here, the hypothalamus, there's like a darker brown area, and then there's like a yellow area. So they've got two lobes, an anterior lobe and a posterior lobe. So the anterior lobe here is in brown, and the posterior lobe is in yellow. And you see there's blood running into it, and there's blood going out of it. So the hypothalamus so right now, in the beginning, we're going to talk about the anterior lobe, because that's a lot more difficult. The anterior lobe makes 7 different types of hormones, and the posterior lobe it holds 2 hormones, right? It doesn't make any, it holds it, right? So we'll get to the posterior because that's not that difficult. So we'll do the anterior first. I think I've got it listed. So look, these are the anterior pituitary hormones, and we're going to go over it. So just for now, it's just relax, but there it is as a list. So right now we're focusing on this anterior pituitary. This is what's going to talk to different parts of the body. There's 5 different types of cells inside of this pituitary gland, this anterior pituitary, right? So in this brown area, you find 5 different types of cells, and that's right here. The 5 different types of cells are going to make these different hormones. So the first thing you notice is all the words end in troph. So you'll see this word like troph or tropic. It just means that it's, as far as I know, it's something that influences something far away. That's not a good explanation. It's something that is going to influence a cell, a target cell that's at a different part of the body. Whatever. I'm not going to test you on what troph means, but they all end in troph. I would like you to know what these words mean back here, because remember, if you know the words, you can get your way through a lot of things that you might not already know. So when you see the word somato, that's going to mean growth. So you can think of like growth, like physical growth or cell division, but it has something to do with growth. So somatotroph, right? If you look across from it, you already see the hormone that somatotrophs make, and you probably heard of this one before, human growth hormone, right? So somato means growth, right? So let's go down to the other one, lacto. That's already kind of telling you again, lacto, milk, lactation, right? So lactotroph. Those are going to make hormones responsible for lactation. Thyrotroph, we just talked about the thyroid. So they're going to make hormones that are going to head down to the thyroid. Gonads are your gonads. They're going to head down to, well, she's not going to be able to watch it. They're going to head down to your testes or ovaries, right? So the gonadotrophs make hormones that head down to you, that are going to eventually go, the target cells are testes and ovaries. Cortico, when you see the word cortico in something, most of the time think about steroids. So think about, like, for example, cortisone, right? That's got that word in it, that C-O-R-T. Right? So corticotroph, something to do with steroids. This is going to make hormones that are going to head down to your adrenal glands. So the good thing about the hormones of the anterior pituitary is that it's very acceptable to use it's preferred to use the abbreviations, right? So we don't have to write out human growth hormone. We could just put HGH. So that's totally fine. Most of the hormones that you're going to learn are abbreviations. And that's fine because that's what everybody uses, right? When you go get like labs for your thyroid gland, you're going to read TSH. No one's going to say thyroid stimulating hormone. So let's go over what these stand for, though, because it'd be kind of nice to know. Human growth hormone, that's HGH. Those human growth hormone is going to end up in things that grow: bone, muscle, liver, some places like that, right? So that's the target cells. There's many target cells, right? Things that grow. PRL stands for prolactin. So prolactin is pretty easy. It's going to the mammary glands. I'm gonna turn my phone off. It's too late to enter the class. It goes to the mammary glands. That's it. Prolactin goes to the mammary glands. It's going to help milk production, right? TSH, the word tells you thyroid stimulating hormone. So it's a hormone that stimulates the thyroid. So that kind of tells you where it's going. It's going to the thyroid gland in your neck. Take the next one. Here's two. So gonadotrophs make two hormones. FSH stands for follicle stimulating hormone. So that's in the ovaries and testes. They do obviously different things, right? In the testes, it's not going to make a follicle. In the ovaries, it's making an ovarian follicle, and then the egg will be formed like in the center of that follicle, right? So it does a lot more in women than men, but it is present in men. And then LH stands for luteinizing hormone. If you study reproductive system, embryology, then you'll hear a lot about these hormones. But anyway, FSH and LH, they both go to the same place, the testes or ovaries. Luckily for you guys, we abbreviate this word, adenocorticotropin hormone. But the A stands for, you could think of this, the A stands for adrenal gland. The C stands for, or the CT stands for corticotroph. And the H means hormone. Anyway, this is a hormone that's going to go to your adrenal glands and cause steroids to be released. You know, steroids like you think of steroids, right? So, and then this last one, which we don't know actually a lot about, it goes up to the brain. It's called melanocyte stimulating hormone. This one actually goes up to your brain to a gland called the pineal gland up here. So it's just going from here to here. And as far as we understand, the pineal gland is probably responsible for like circadian rhythms and melanin. So, you know, I'm not gonna really test you on that one, but I would like you to know, because that is probably going to be a test question, what are anterior pituitary hormones? And these are the hormones right here. These 7. These are the cells that make them. The ones that end in troph, that's the cell that makes them. These are the actual hormones. So that anterior pituitary, this brown lobe right here, the anterior lobe, makes 7 hormones. There's 5 cells in there and they make 7 hormones. Any questions so far? Those hormones are not going to be released those 7 hormones, they won't get released until the hypothalamus tells it to release the hormone. So these get a signal from the hypothalamus. That's how they know to be released. The anterior pituitary will not release them otherwise. And look, here's our 7 hormones again. These are the hormones that, I know it's a lot of hormones here, but these are the hormones that are released by the hypothalamus that cause these hormones to be released from the pituitary. If you notice, they're all ending in RH, and RH stands for releasing hormone. The letters are not too far off. This stands for growth hormone. So growth hormone, so when it's time to, when somebody's like going into puberty, for example, right? Your hypothalamus is getting like a message, oh, time to grow. And then the hypothalamus is going to release GHRH, and that's going to go to the pituitary gland. Then the pituitary gland is going to release human growth hormone. Or when it's getting close to having a baby time, PRH, prolactin releasing hormone, is released by the hypothalamus. Right? It's getting signals. It's getting signals from the body saying, yeah, time to go. This baby is maybe not today, but it's going to come out. Right? And so it's getting all this input from the body, and it releases PRH, and that goes to the pituitary gland. Then the pituitary is going to release PRL. PRL go down to your mammary glands. Same thing here. If your metabolism's too low, the hypothalamus is going to release thyrotropin releasing hormone, or you could just say thyroid releasing hormone. That's going to go to the pituitary and cause it to release TSH. TSH is going to go to the thyroid gland. So this is what they all are. GN stands for gonads, gonadotropin releasing hormone. C stands for corticotropin releasing hormone. So these are all the releasing hormones that are released by the hypothalamus. They go to the pituitary, and they cause the anterior pituitary to release these hormones. So you've got 3 columns here, actually. Column 1, or this first column here, that's the name, that's the type of cell that's in the pituitary. This column right here, these are the 7 hormones that the anterior pituitary makes and releases. So this column right here, it's the same thing as this column here. Right? So these hormones aren't going to be released until this releasing hormone comes from the hypothalamus. So the releasing hormones are coming from the hypothalamus. That's kind of throwing a lot at you too, right? There's 2 ways you could approach this. You can kind of memorize it from top down and just go GHRH, PRH, TRH, GnRH. Again, the abbreviations are fine, preferred. You don't have to learn the words, right? But so you could memorize it just for the sake of memorizing it, or you could go across this way and see them as like cycles, right? Growth hormone releasing hormone is going to be released by the hypothalamus. Then human growth hormone is going to be released by the pituitary, like that. But anyway, that's probably something I'm going to ask you about. So I might ask you, what are the anterior pituitary hormones? And then what are the cells that make those hormones? So that would be this slide. Or I could ask you this way. What are the anterior pituitary hormones, and what are the releasing hormones or what are the hormones from the hypothalamus causing their release? Something like that, right? And that would be this slide. And I wouldn't have you write it out as like a narrative. This is pretty much listing. It's like I have it, right? It's kind of like a memorization type of thing. That's the anterior. That's a lot harder, right? Because there's 7 hormones, and then there's releasing hormones, and then there's the cells that make the pituitary hormones. So how do you guys feel about that? I mean, are you confused on anything?
So, Mr. Klaus.
Yes, Klaus.
So if you ask releasing hormones, so we would have to state it just like you have it, the HGH. That's supposed to be the human growth hormone, you said? What is it, HGH?
Yeah, that's what it stands for. You could put it just HGH, and that's fine.
Okay. And then we have to put this on the side, the GHRH.
The GHRH is the releasing hormone.
Okay.
And you see they all end with RH. So
right.
That means releasing hormone. So if that's releasing, means it's giving permission to the anterior pituitary to release HGH. So all these RHs releasing means I'm giving you permission to release HGH. So these are the pituitary hormones, and these are the hormones from the hypothalamus.
Okay.
That probably didn't help you that much, but
I'm just gonna have to study it and look in the book as well.
I've got like other videos on it. Like to give you an example, here's the hypothalamus in white, and then here's so this would be, I mean, don't worry so much about the name, but when it's time to grow, this hypothalamus is secreting GHRH, growth hormone releasing hormone. That hormone's jumping in the blood right here, and it's just going right here, next door. That's it. And now that it's in the blood, it goes into these cells. There's cells in here called somatotrophs. It goes to them and it says, okay, somatotrophs, time to release your human growth hormone because like this person's got to grow. And then the human growth hormone jumps into the blood here, and you see how it's leaving, right? It's going out to different places in the body. So your bones are going to grow and your muscles going to grow and all that stuff. So that's kind of like how it all works. Or same thing with your metabolism. It's called TRH, releasing hormone, thyroid releasing hormone. It's made right in the hypothalamus, and it's going to go into the bloodstream here, kind of where it's red, and it's going into the blue part of the bloodstream. And then when that hormone TRH gets here, that's a signal to the pituitary. Hey, you better release your TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone, because the thyroid's not doing its job. Then TSH gets put into the blood here, and it's leaving. It's going to make its way down to the thyroid gland. So,
one other question.
Yeah.
Are you adding additional videos, or just the videos you currently have out there is we can go over it and it's relating to this information, or you're adding more?
I'm adding more that are these. So
okay.
Maybe watching just the lecture, that might be good enough for you. But if the lecture is kind of like long, I have some ideas that I've broken it down. Like I think I might have the pituitary gland just by itself. So it's like maybe you could watch like a 7-minute video of just this part without the other things. But if you're wondering, am I going to post more videos with like other material? No.
Okay.
If you see lots of videos, it might just be the same material, but like 3 videos on the same material. So I'm not giving you new information. Okay. I'm not going to test you on anything we didn't go over in class. For example, if you look in the book and you're kind of like reading along, there's a big passage about what's called the hypophyseal portal system, and I decided over the years to take it out because I didn't see any of that coming back in classes that you've taken after this, right? So that's I'm not going to ask you about that, but it's in your book. It's right around this point where you start to talk about the pituitary. There's this big passage, and there's lots of information about how things flow through this system, but we're not having it. So posterior pituitary is a lot easier. So we're talking about the posterior lobe now, that one that was in yellow. It doesn't make any hormones. It holds hormones. So the hypothalamus will make a hormone and store it in the posterior pituitary gland. And these are this third bullet point. Those are the two hormones that the posterior pituitary releases: ADH and oxytocin. ADH is very commonly called vasopressin. You might hear me call it vasopressin, right? So, but I mean, same thing, right? Vasopressin. So, like in the hospital setting, they always call it vasopressin. So it's a hormone that we make, but vasopressin is a drug that they give in the hospital. That they use that to get blood pressure up. Actually, oxytocin is a drug that they give in the hospital because that's going to, if wow, I don't know what you call it. When you're giving birth and it's not happening right away, induce labor. Wow, simple words I can't think of. Oxytocin they'll give it to induce labor. So oxytocin, let's start with that one. Oxytocin, um, there's a few things that it does, but two of the main things that it does is that it helps your uterine walls contract during labor. So right around labor time, this stuff's being like dumped. And also something called the letdown reflex. So um, you use prolactin to make milk. Like the prolactin will go to your mammary glands and you start making milk, but that's not enough. Just because you're starting to produce milk doesn't mean that you're actually going to release milk. So oxytocin will be responsible for something called the letdown reflex, which is putting the milk into the duct. So something, and this is an example of like permissive hormones, right? Because prolactin doesn't do the job by itself. It needs permission of like another hormone, right? And that's just to make sure you don't want to just start producing milk when you're not supposed to, right? Or so. So let's go to that ADH now, vasopressin. Um, so ADH, antidiuretic hormone. This is really about blood pressure. So your body's designed to raise blood pressure, not to lower blood pressure, right? Because when your blood pressure is too low, you're not getting oxygen to your tissues. So we call that hypoperfusion or shock. I mean, that's essentially what shock is. You're not getting enough oxygen to your cells, so you're trying to prevent shock. So we're built for that. So why would you have like low blood pressure? There's different reasons. Obviously, if you're bleeding out, that's going to cause low blood pressure, right? Because your blood's leaving. But there's other things. You could be dehydrated, right? You could drink a lot of diuretics and not drink water and be dehydrated. It's very common, like during Mardi Gras, this happens. They've just spent like 2-3 days drinking, and they're not drinking water. They're just drinking alcohol, and alcohol is a diuretic, just like coffee or something, right? And so they're actually losing water, right? Drinking a hurricane is not going to provide your body with water. You actually end up peeing out more than you bring in, right? And so um, they get dehydrated. Um, and so your body has mechanisms to help with this. The first mechanism, and kind of the easiest one, is to constrict your blood vessels. That's this word vasopressin. It's like pressing on your blood vessels, right? So when you squeeze the blood vessels, the pressure inside goes up. That's kind of a quick thing you can do. Um, Another thing you can do is control the amount of urine you make, right? You've got to make urine, but how much water you add to the urine, that's up to your kidneys. So your kidneys are filtering your blood all the time, and they're trying to figure out how much water should we put in it. Well, if you drink lots and lots of water, then your kidneys are going to add lots of water to the urine, right? And then your pee's like clear color, right? But when your pee's like that nasty yellow color, that's ADH. That's all ADH working because you haven't been drinking enough, and now you're going to use the least amount of water that you can to make urine. So your body's trying to conserve water. By conserving water, you conserve the amount of blood you have in your body. So, being hydrated is directly tied in with how much blood. So when you drink a bottle of water, you literally have more blood than you did before. It's plasma. It's blood plasma, but it's more blood. So you can literally have more blood than you did before. And usually your kidneys will take the water out of your blood and make urine with it, right? But you do have more blood. So the more blood you have, the more pressure you have. So when you have low blood pressure, the last thing you want to do is get rid of water from your body, because that means you're getting rid of water from your blood. Less blood, lower pressure. So ADH is doing two things. And this is like, this is a lot of blah, blah. If you want to go and try to memorize 1 through 6, be my guest. I think it's a bad way to learn things. ADH is keeping your blood pressure up. It's hitting it in 3 ways, and it's right down here. Method number one, make less urine. You don't have to write kidneys retain more water, which decreases urine output. Make less urine. I want you to understand what it's doing. You're decreasing the amount of pee that you're making. So therefore, you're trying to keep as much water in your body as you can. I don't care how you say it. Sweat less. That kind of makes sense. It's not a very effective method, by the way, but sweat less. So if you're dehydrated, don't sweat as much because you're losing water from your sweat. That you have to kind of like keep, like your body won't do a lot of that because if it's hot outside and you're not sweating, you overheat really quick. So even on like normal days, you're producing sweat. Like even today, you're sweating. And if you weren't sweating, you would know it. So that's kind of that middle one. If you skip it and you don't even talk about it, I'm good. So it's really these two on the outside. Constrict your blood vessels, make less urine. That's what ADH does, or vasopressin. And what stimulates it is being dehydrated. I mean, yeah, there is a mechanism, like when a lot of water leaves the cells in this hypothalamus, it automatically triggers. Like you see, the hypothalamus is directly connected with the pituitary gland here. So that's what they're trying to tell you. But you know what? Don't worry about osmoreceptors and all that. Just when you're dehydrated, your body releases antidiuretic hormone, ADH. And that's what ADH does. Make less urine, tells your kidneys to use the least amount of the least amount of water it can when it makes urine, and then it constricts Not all blood vessels, but certain blood vessels, which you'll learn about later. So I want you to know what these two hormones do. And I want you to know that these are the two hormones that are in the posterior lobe. So it's kind of simple in that we don't have different types of cells like somatotrophs and stuff. You don't have to learn that. There's no releasing hormones like on here. There's no releasing hormones. The pituitary, I mean the hypothalamus is wired in directly with it. So there's like nerves here, and those nerves are going right here. So you don't even have to make a hormone that goes through the blood. It's just direct connection. Right? These two are wired together. This one isn't. So you have to make a hormone, and it has to go into the blood, and it has to make its way here. Even though they're right next to each other, they're not connected, right? And if you kind of look at it, you can kind of see how this is yellow and this is yellow. It looks like they're kind of like the same tissue, and this one's sort of not connected. So the posterior is connected by nerves, and the anterior is connected by hormones. So you guys have any question on that? It's a lot of information. Oh, look, and it's only 9:50. Man, we talked for like 45 minutes. You guys even still there? A couple of you are. All right. Way to go, two of you. You two are awesome. 3 of these people are asleep. 3 of them are making breakfast. A couple of them are on their... Oh! Brooke, you're actually listening. Oh, Brooke, look at you. You've got paper in front of you. Taking notes. Harley's paying attention. Look at you guys.
I'm listening.
I get it. You're here, but like, if I had my choice, I'd probably turn my camera off too. Oh, look at all you guys are here.
I'm listening.
Wow.
And taking notes.
Taking notes.
Right.
Taking notes. You guys are awesome. If you ever want to send those notes over, like take a picture or scan them and email them before a test, I can look at them and make sure that you got everything and didn't get stuff. I got no problem doing that. Huh, Brooke?
Yeah.
It'll work. All right. Wow. Okay. I'm impressed. Look at you guys. Not my son. He turns he doesn't even get out of bed. He just goes into the class, shuts his mic off, shuts his camera off, rolls back over and goes to sleep. I like to walk into his room. He's just dead asleep. And you know, I used to be stupid. I can hear it from the living room. Oh, look at my son. He's in class. I can hear the instructor. Oh, he's such a good kid. He woke up in time and went to class. He's asleep. Woke up long enough to turn on a computer. All right. So I don't want to go too fast. I've got more than this, but I don't want to go too fast either. Let me look at, oh, wait, that was one I wanted. What happens when I open this one? I've got a certain place I want to, okay, this one I could do a little bit. All right. Let's review just for a second. I don't want to like jump into this right yet. I mean, are you feeling like you don't feel like this is like too much information? You're okay with it?
No, it's a lot.
It's nice.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot of information.
What I don't want to do is just keep going. Like if you're not comfortable with where you're at now, and then if I keep going, that's what I'm afraid of. That I'll start losing some of you, and you're gonna be like, "Oh, forget it." Like I'll watch the video later, which is fine. But I mean, you know how it gets. You just get overwhelmed, and then you just shut off.
Right.
So I don't want to get to that point either, where I just I don't know, it's too heavy. I'm gonna open the other PowerPoint again. And I gotta find it. Oh no, I closed it. So I've got some smaller video versions of this that I'll probably put up. Not here. Let me open this again. All right. Do you guys remember this one? To start off kind of easy. Circulating versus local.
Local. Okay.
Circulating are in the blood. That's it. They circulate through the blood. So it's, for example, pretend this cell right here. This is like the cell, and that's like the nucleus in the cell. And then there's the hormone being made by the cell. So this cell's making a hormone. For example, TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. So we know that thyroid stimulating hormone is going to go here to the thyroid gland in your neck. It's being made here, and it's going to go here. So that'd be an example of a circulating hormone. So there's the TSH. It's going to go into the blood, and then that blood's going to go down your neck, and right around the thyroid gland, it jumps off, and it finds the receptor. So these cells here are in the thyroid gland itself. So there's the TSH, those little dots. Those little dots are going to go to this receptor, and now that's stimulating the cells. These cells need to make a hormone. There's these two hormones called T3 and T4. So, and that's, I mean, it stands for something, but that's what we call them. We call them T3 and T4. Oh, it's sunny outside. T3 and T4. T3 and T4 regulate your metabolism. So if you don't have enough T3 and T4, it's like really hard to get out of bed. And I don't mean like hard to get out of bed like it is for us, but like really hard, right? We have like no appetite, just lethargic all day, gaining lots of weight, things like that. It just means your metabolism's not working right. So those two hormones regulate it. They make it go faster or slower, right? Your heartbeat is slower, things like that. If you made too much of T3 and too much T4, the opposite. Think of the opposite things, right? Your heart's racing all the time. You're like nervous. You're not sleeping. You just keep waking up. Things like that. So it's common. About 10% of the population has what's called hypothyroid. So they're not making enough. So the cells in your thyroid here are not making enough hormone. And there's like different reasons for it, but your body's not really concerned with the reasons. It just wants your thyroid to make more, right? And so that's why thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, it comes into your bloodstream. Here's the pituitary cell. It's making it, going into the bloodstream, making its way down to the thyroid gland in your neck, and then it gets released. And when it hits the receptors, because there's other stuff in your neck, right? I mean, it's not going to your larynx, your voice box, and stimulating cells there, because those cells don't have the receptors. Only your thyroid has the receptors. So it's getting to this receptor, and it wants these cells to make T3 and T4. So ideally, that's what happens. So when you look in like a hospital, if you have hypothyroid, you don't actually have to test T3 and T4. You don't have to measure that in your blood. You could just go and measure TSH. That's what they typically do. So if I want to see how much thyroid hormone you're making, I'm going to go look at what the pituitary is doing. Because if you're not making, let's say that you have low T3 and T4, what's going to happen to your TSH? What are those levels going to look like? I know, sorry.
Are those high levels or?
High. Because that's
Yeah.
like the upper management, right? And when the people on the factory floor aren't doing the job, the CEO's up middle management's ass, and so middle management goes down to the floor and it's like, what the hell? Get to work. And so that's what's happening. You're going to find a lot of TSH because it's trying to stimulate these cells to do their job. And then the opposite would be true. You know, if these cells are making way too much T3 and T4, so it's like they're doing extra work, you know, they're working overtime, they're not taking lunch. What do you think middle management or upper management's doing? Upper management's shopping on the internet. Upper management's not doing anything. Everything's fine. They're overproducing. So TSH is going to be low. When you find a really low level of TSH, then you think, oh, the thyroid gland is overactive. So, and then again, you know, you know how like the pituitary is not going to even make this hormone unless the hypothalamus tells it that there's some problem. So the hypothalamus is the CEO. If the CEO is not bothering you, you're going to just sit there and shop on Amazon and watch YouTube videos all day and get paid. I mean, why are you going to work, right? But as soon as the CEO like calls you and say, hey, what's up? Factory's not making anything, then you got to get up, go down to the factory and start making sure things happen. So, don't know what my point was for all that, but that's kind of how this whole thing. Oh, negative feedback was my point. As long as the hypothalamus, as long as the CEO is not causing any problems for the upper management, then that's it. Nobody's talking to anybody. Everyone's just doing their job. Thyroid's making T3, T4. The pituitary gland's just kind of sitting on its ass, watching YouTube videos. And the hypothalamus is fine too. It's not doing anything. That's negative feedback. But if there's a problem, like not enough thyroid hormone and your metabolism's like way low, that's a problem. So now we got to do something about it. And now you start that whole circle. Hypothalamus talks to the pituitary. Pituitary talks to the thyroid. Thyroid makes more hormone. And then when problem's solved, that's it. It all shuts itself off. That loop, they call it a negative feedback loop, right? Because it is kind of like a loop. It's like a cycle. So it all closes off. But if you notice here on like these slides, there's two places here. You see there's like releasing hormones, but here I have GHIH and PIH. The I stands for inhibiting. Sometimes negative feedback doesn't work, and you have to go and tell it, okay, stop doing this. So in the case of growth hormone, the hypothalamus is going to release growth hormone releasing hormone, GHRH. Then the pituitary is going to release human growth hormone, and then they're going to start like growing. They'll keep going. You have to shut it down. There's no negative feedback here. It won't be like, oh, once this person becomes 18 or once they grow to 5'8", okay, we're going to shut it down. You know, it's growing, right? So there's not really like a negative thing. So this is different. This doesn't work on negative feedback. You got to shut the thing down. Same thing with milk. How long are you going to produce milk? Like forever? So it's not negative producing milk. It's not like a problem, right? So you got to tell, the hypothalamus has to tell the pituitary gland, all right, stop, PIH. Another word for PIH is dopamine. They use that. They use that in the hospital to whatever the opposite of inducing labor is. Which I just can't think of words today. But when they want to delay it, shut it down, they'll give dopamine, which is PIH. So so these two here are not negative feedback. Human growth hormone, prolactin, they don't use negative feedback. The hypothalamus has to tell it, shut the whole thing down. But the rest of these 5 right here, they all use negative feedback. So so there was circulating hormones. I'm kind of going back to what's on the quiz here. Circulating hormones, they just circulate through the blood. I got way off track on that. And then these two are local, right? So 2 types of local. And remember, para means nearby, because you're going to see para in other words. Parathyroid, for example, guess where it is? It's really near the thyroid, right? And then auto meaning self, autoimmune, autocrine, self-secreting. And so if you notice the hormones being secreted, it's turning around and going to the same cell that secreted it, which never makes sense to me. Why doesn't the cell just fix itself from the inside? But I don't know. That's one of the mysteries. Right, but paracrine, you'll see like one cell secreting it, and it's going to a nearby cell, and it'll act on that. Right. So estrogen, for example, estrogen acts in different places in the body, but often estrogen acts right there, like in the ovaries or in the uterus. Right. It's made there, and it's going to act really close by. Right. The heart makes a hormone that. Well, now you know what ADH does, right? This hormone does the opposite of ADH. So everything that ADH does, antidiuretic hormone. Antidiuretic hormone causes you to make less urine, and it constricts your blood vessels, right? Your heart makes a hormone that does the opposite. It dilates your blood vessels, and it makes you pee more. So that's all to get blood pressure down. So the heart, but it acts on the heart. It makes your heart rate go down. Like the heart's making it, and it's turning around and acting on the same cells of the heart to make the heart rate slow. Just kind of like, why does the heart have to make a hormone to make itself slow down? Can't it just slow itself down? But anyway, that's coming later. That's a little thing that might be on the exam. So synergistic, antagonize, I mean, you've heard of that word, so that one you'll know. You might have heard of synergy, working together. Right, so, and then permissive, giving permission. So, and again, don't confuse it with that word agonist. We don't even want to talk about these, do we? But up till slide 5, those are on, that's all quiz material. And also the idea of target cells, right? So I don't have it on this slide, but I talked about it last lecture, like making more receptors or fewer receptors. So if you look at this here, or this here, imagine you see how there's like 20 dots representing the hormone. Imagine that there was only like 3 dots out of all of this. So then you would make more of these green receptors, right? That's like upregulating. So we don't want to lose, there's so little hormone, we don't want to lose any of it, right? Maybe that little one right there, that guy right here is going to get away. No, we need more receptors around here to catch whatever little bit is around. That's upregulation, making more receptors. Your cell can very quickly make 10,000 receptors or 2,000 receptors. It can play around. So depending on what's going on in your body, right? So it always adapts. So upregulation, making more receptors, usually to make it more sensitive to a hormone. When you want to get more of the hormone. And then the opposite, downregulation, making fewer receptors, because there's lots of hormone, right? If you flood this bloodstream, this thing's supposed to be your bloodstream, right? You flood it with hormone. We put 3 times as many dots in here. You don't need as many of these green receptors. Just one, maybe. Like it's too much. So how are you guys doing with this one? I know it's a lot. That's just a chain reaction, and all this stuff is, I see it come back in other classes. So when you learn about like pharmacology, for example, then you start getting into this, because you saw that I gave you like this chain reaction. This causes this and this causes this. If you can shut down certain things, then you can stop the whole process. So maybe you don't want your cells to behave a certain way. You can shut it down, right? And so when you're a drug manufacturer, you want to look at all of this. Okay, well, what can I shut down here? What can I block? Can I block a G protein? Can I block adenylate cyclase? If you stop any part of this whole process, then you stop the end. So that's what you want, right? Or same thing here. Can we stop the hormone from getting inside? Can we somehow stop it from influencing this is not as common, right? But can we stop it from influencing the DNA? So I'm getting off subject here, but the two vaccines, the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines, that's what you see. Like they have the mRNA, they're mRNA vaccines, right? So they're injecting this strand into your blood. So that strand is coming here, and it's telling your DNA to fight the virus. It's kind of a new way of doing it. All right, I'm getting off subject. All right, no questions on any of this stuff? Probably maybe I'll just talk about one more thing, which will be the thyroid hormones. I'll get more.
What was the oxytocin again?
What's that?
The oxytocin, because we know the ADH is makes less urine. What does the oxytocin do?
It makes your uterine muscles contract during labor.
Okay.
And it helps to dilate the cervix, but more importantly, it makes your uterine muscles contract. And then there's something else called a letdown reflex. So that's the mammary glands, right? So you make the milk, but then you got to put the milk into a duct. Then it'll be ready to come out, right? Just because the milk's made by the cells, it doesn't mean it's coming out. So oxytocin helps with milk coming out. And and definitely know what ADH does as well. But don't care so much about the sweat glands. That's up to you if you want to put it. But definitely the idea is that the kidneys are going to hold on to water and not use it to make urine. And that's why your urine gets darker. For dehydrated people, that's one of the first things that they will even do in hospitals. They're going to try to look at your urine, see what color it is. but they're also looking at your heart rate. So think about this: if you have less blood in your body, and you got to get that blood around your body, and there's less of it, what happens to what's your heart going to do?
Gonna pump faster.
It's going to pump faster, right? It's got less material to work with. Now it has to work faster. So heart rate's definitely going to go up. So people that are dehydrated, when you take their blood pressure, it's going to read lower, obviously, because their blood pressure's down. And then heart rate is going to be higher, elevated. So, people that you find that have let's say someone gets freaked out by something, or someone gets in a fight and they're just all worked up, right? Blood pressure's high and heart rate's high. And probably the heart rate is causing the blood pressure to be high. So you're going to see them both high. Someone dehydrated, heart rate's high, blood pressure's low. So that's a sign. And as you start getting fluids into them, you give them an IV and you start watching them over an hour or something, half hour, their heart rate starts to come down, right? And then as a nurse, you're going to look at their urine too. You're going to expect that's going to get, over time, that's going to get, well, first of all, they're going to make they're going to make urine. Just the fact that they're peeing means something. And then it's going to get lighter in color. So. But then the faster thing that it does is contracting blood vessels. That's always going to work pretty quick. So when people start to go into shock, for example, their blood vessels are constricting. Like that's kind of like the first compensatory mechanism that you have. All right, let me talk about this last thing. So let me close this out. All right, so here we are at the thyroid gland, because we've been talking about this gland. So we're going to start talking about some of these glands, like taking a closer look at them. So here's your larynx. Here's your Adam's apple. All right, so this is all your voice box. So right underneath your voice box, on both sides, you find the thyroid gland. And then there's like a little, we call this like a little isthmus here, joining the two lobes. But anyway, it's kind of like on the sides, right? And so here is what it looks like histologically. Like if you were to take a slice of the thyroid gland, a thin slice, and put it under a microscope, you're going to find a whole bunch of these things. So let's look at all these little black dots. So all these little black dots are the nucleus of a cell. We don't actually look at cells. We just look at the nucleus, because I could try to make this bigger, but I can't even make it bigger, but I can't even see the cells, right? I know these are cells that are shaped like cubes, cuboidal epithelial cells, but we're just looking at the nucleus, because it's a little ridiculous to see these things. And so in practice, everybody just looks at the nucleus. So anyway, you see all of these nuclei, or all these cells. There's one that looks like a box. Anyway, we see them all in a circular thing, right? And then you have this pink area in the middle. So that is called a follicle. A follicle is a ring of cells around something. I think of it like a lake and then the houses around the lake. That's what a follicle is. So we call this, the lake is called a colloid, and that'll be in another slide if you don't want to write it down. Collloid. Anyway. And then the cells going around it are follicular cells. See, it's like labeled here. So cells going around it, those are follicular cells. That whole thing is called the follicle. See, here's part of another one right here. Here's a little tiny one that's not quite made yet. Here's another one down here. See these cells, see the second row of cells down here? That's making this other follicle, kind of where my arrow is. So here's a follicle. There's part of one. There's part of one. So those are follicular cells. Those cells are making the two hormones that are responsible for your metabolism, T3, T4. T4 has another word, by the way. It's called thyroxine. Oh, there we go. Here's another view. The white in here is just, it was an old slide. So it started drying out and this pink stuff started to pull away from the wall. That's all. The lake's dried up. It's not supposed to be white, really. But you can see all these follicles, right? I've got the follicular cells labeled, right? Here, this whole thing going around is a follicle. Follicle. You get the idea, right? And then there's some cells, like I'm pointing to them right here. They're not part of the follicle. So there's the word parafollicular. They're near the follicle, right? They've got the cheaper houses. They don't get the house on the lake. They don't have a boat. So cheaper houses, parafollicular cells, they're making something else. They're making some hormones that are going to deal with calcium. So we'll talk about that maybe later, right? So right now we're just looking at the follicular cells. So in the thyroid, we have two types of cells, follicular cells, parafollicular cells. So I just want to make sure I didn't have any slide that would. Okay, so the follicular cells are making two hormones, T3 and T4. T4 is going to have another name. We'll deal with that later. It's called thyroxine, but don't worry about it. So what does the 3 and the 4 stand for? It stands for iodine, like the number of iodine molecules. So thyroid hormones use iodine. It's pretty much the only part of your body that uses iodine is your thyroid gland. So the T stands for like this, it's like this protein. I can't remember the name of it now. Is it tyrosine, thyroglobin? I think it's tyrosine. Triiodothyronine. It's called thyroid. It doesn't matter what it's called, does it? It's a protein. The T stands for a protein, and then the 3 means 3 iodine molecules attached, or 4 iodine molecules attached. That's it, right? So this hormone comes in two forms. T3 and T4, they both do the same thing. They both influence your metabolism. So this slide, which looks kind of like a pain in the ass slide, but I'll try to break it down and make it easier. This is going to show how thyroid hormones are made. So I might jump out of this slide and go, well, I'll keep it. Okay, so like, I'll come back to it. But you see all these follicles? There's capillaries. There's like, you can't see them because we can't stain it. They're not stained. They don't stain when you make slides, but there's capillaries in here that you can't see. They're running like all over here, right? Delivering blood. So there's a blood supply to all these cells. All the purple dots are the nucleus of the cell, right? So all these cells are getting supplied by blood. You just can't see it. So that's what they're showing here. Here's the cell. There's no nucleus in here, but here's the cell. It looks kind of weird here, right? But it's the cell. And then here's like one of the blood capillaries next to the cell. So they're showing it to you up here, right? Here's the colloid, like that middle part, the lake. Here's the lake houses. There's the dots for the nucleus. Right? And then there's right here and right here, there's like a blood capillary supplying the cell. So 2 ingredients to make thyroid hormones. Ingredient number 1, a protein. Ingredient number 2, iodine. That's the 2 ingredients. T3 and T4 are made out of two things, protein and iodine. So where do we get the iodine? Out of the blood. We're going to pull it from the blood. Where do we get the protein? The cell's going to make it. So make the protein, pull iodine out of the blood, put them together, you've got your hormone. So they put it in steps here. So step one, take the iodine out of the blood. And you notice how it's all negative, negative. There's all these minus signs next to the I. So it's I with a minus sign. The I stands for iodine. Every mineral in our body is charged. So every mineral is going to have a plus or a negative. Sodium, potassium, magnesium, iodine, phosphorus, whatever it is, calcium, they all have pluses or minuses. They're all cations or anions. Right, so iodine is an anion, or you could say it's negatively charged, right? So iodine's negatively charged. So we're going to pull this iodine from the blood. We got to get rid of the charge. So that's not hard to do. When something is negative, it means it's got an extra electron. So you just pluck the electron off of the iodine and do something else with it, get rid of it, right? And then you could take away the charge. So that's what's happening with the iodine. We're taking the iodine out of the blood, remove the charge, throw it into the colloid, into the middle, throw it into the lake, the mixing bowl, right? So take the iodine out of the blood, pull it out of the blood, remove the negative part, throw it into the middle. Throw it into the mixing bowl in this colloid. At the same time on this side, where is it? I saw it. Number two, we're making a protein. And it's called, and we're going to use the name TGB, but it stands for thyroglobulin. So we're making thyroglobulin. That's the protein part. So pull the iodine from the blood, make the protein, and we're going to mix them together in the colloid in the middle. You like how I do this with my hands? That's a bonus to the lecture. We're going to put that in the middle here. So we're not really following these numbers so much. We're just kind of. So take the iodine out of the blood, take off the negative. That's called, not called iodination. We're going to deionize, whatever. We're taking the negative off. We're going to throw it in the middle. Make the protein, this cell, this follicular cell's making this protein, TGB, and it's putting it in the middle. See, so there's TGB. There's an iodine. Notice how it says I2. Don't worry about the 2. It just means there's 2 of them together. But notice how it's not charged, right? So here it's an I with a negative. Here, the charge is gone. So it just took the electron off, made it a normal iodine. So there's our 2 ingredients, TGB, iodine. We're going to put them together. And when we put them together, we end up with all these molecules of T1 and T2. So some of these TGBs get 1 iodine stuck to it. Some of them get 2 iodines stuck to it. It just, however it works out. Then the T1s and the T2s, they all start mixing together. So when you join a T1 and a T2 together, that makes T3. If you take T2 and a T2, T4. That's it. It just becomes T3 and T4. So now you got a bunch of T3 and T4 inside this middle colloid area. So that's our finished product. So we got to take it and get it into the blood. So you're gonna, this cell, like let's say this cell right here, is gonna take the T3, T4, and it's gonna suck it in, and it's gonna spit it out into the blood. We have words for that, right? Pinocytosis and exocytosis, whatever, but that's what's happening, right? So right here, the cell is sucking back in the finished product. Here, the cell is putting it into the colloid, and then on the other side, it's taking it back in, the finished product, T3 and T4. See, here's the T3, here's the T4, and it's going to put it out into the blood. Oh, I just hit the. It's going to put it out into the blood. So to try to even make it simpler, take the iodine from the blood, make the protein, mix it together, put the finished product back out into the blood. Notice down here, to make things more confusing for you, here they're saying something called TGB, and then you look down here, here's something called TBG. So remember, thyroid hormones are lipid soluble, right? Thyroid hormones and steroids. They're lipid soluble, so they can't just go into the blood by themselves. So TBG stands for thyroxine binding, well, see, it's written right here, thyroxine binding globulin. It's a transport protein. You don't need to, TBG is fine, right? So it's T3 and T4 have to ride on a protein. And that's it. It's transported in the blood. So if you have like hypothyroid, there could be different reasons for it. One reason, which doesn't happen in the United States, one reason is that there's no iodine available. So if you have no iodine, that's it. You can't make the material. In some parts of the world, we still have a problem. So in the United States, no, we used to. Like in the corn-eating country, you know, Nebraska and stuff, where they don't have a lot of seafood. Seafood has a lot of iodine in it, right? They didn't have enough iodine. So that's a reason to have no T3 and T4. Maybe you're not making TBG. So you can make the T3 and T4, but now you have nothing to attach it to in the blood, so it can't go anywhere. But in this country, it's an autoimmune disease. We don't know why, but something's attacking your immune system's attacking your follicular cells, and that's usually why people have a hypothyroid. But anyway, how are they made? You know, I didn't break it down into these steps, but that's essentially what it is. Just mixing these two together. This will probably be the last thing that I'm going to tell you what it does. All right, so that's how they're made. I think I might have a separate video on that. I'm pretty sure I do. I'm thinking about it. I'm pretty sure I do, and I'll post it. It just talks about how thyroid hormones are made. But remember, T3, T4, there they are right here. They regulate your metabolism. How exactly? Look at the bottom here. So skip all this stuff. You don't need to. You already kind of know it, but you don't need to know it. It's just saying that TRH made by the hypothalamus, TSH made by the pituitary, and TSH goes to the thyroid and tells the thyroid to make T3 and T4. This process right here, all of this, will not happen without thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. So when we talk about like raising your metabolism, it does these things. So increases your metabolic rate. Let's see, I don't want you to know all of these. Increases your, hold on. Okay, forget all of this. I'm going to tell you just one thing that it really does different. It increases the amount of oxygen that you use in your body. So when you want to make ATP, oh, it's the second one right here. Sorry. Increase the use of glucose and oxygen for ATP production. ATP is energy. If you don't remember that from biology, ATP is the way we do things in our body. ATP is our body's form of energy. So to make ATP, we need a couple things. We need oxygen, which is hence why you breathe. You need oxygen to make ATP. You need an energy source to make ATP. You got to convert energy into ATP. So sugars or fats. So glucose or lipids. You need that, and you're going to break that up, take the oxygen, and then you make ATP. So thyroid hormones in particular help you helps take the oxygen and use it in making ATP. Maybe I went too far talking about that part. But I would like you to know this part, at least for today. So for today, if you're following in your book, we went all the way up until the manufacture of thyroid hormones, which is, as you see, a lot of information. And you might feel lost. That's completely okay because I'm throwing new words and I'm talking about new stuff. That's normal. You don't feel like, first of all, you might feel like you're lost, but everyone else like gets it. That's definitely not true. It's everyone's lost, and that's normal. I'm gonna stop recording.